Okay, welcome back. And as you know, yesterday we took a look at the story of the 7-story building that collapsed. We looked at it. Since then, you know, the governor has accepted the resignation of the commissioner responsible in that particular sector. This morning, in addition to having in our studio architect Akinola George, immediate past president of BCPG, and as I explained yesterday, that's Building Collapse Prevention Guild. Thank you very much for coming on, sir. A fine morning to you.
Thank you for having me.
Our pleasure.
Fine morning to you too.
Indeed, thank you very much. Let's take an update report by our Sharon Ijason.
More than 24 hours after an uncompleted 7-story building in Lekki area of Lagos collapsed, search and rescue operation at the scene are still ongoing. More bodies were recovered from the rubble in the early hours of the day as emergency responders continue to search for any survivor. The Southwest Coordinator of the National Emergency Management Agency, NEMA, Ibrahim Farinloye, said the agency is advocating preventive emergency work plan.
We shouldn't wait for disaster to occur, rather to prevent it from the bud. What we've been crying for is mainstreaming of disaster risk reduction strategy. If there are issues relating to regulation, we have various types of regulatory bodies. So the bodies should be empowered to carry out their functions as it should be.
We have many substandards in Nigeria, and we call them several times to improve. Because where you have design of 2 tons of iron rod 12 mm, and whereby they deliver 10 mm for you instead of 12 mm, the building may have problem. My advice is that all the distributors of iron rod should buy iron rod with certificate.
According to eyewitnesses, the building was sealed on the 18th of February 2021 by officials of the Lagos State Building Control Agency, but the developer continued to work on it until the unfortunate incident on Sunday.
We appeal to the good people of Lagos State that we are on top of all the challenges and all the key stakeholders that are important in managing emergency are on the ground. And we are all working under the watch of Mr. Governor, Mr. Babajide Olusola Sanwo-Olu.
With the increase in building collapse in the state and in other parts of the country, experts are of the opinion that there is a need for a national discourse on what will be the terms and conditions for the building industry to actually operate on when constructing a building, pre-construction, during construction, and post-construction, where safety and the quality of products that will be used to build the building will be prioritized, and a minimum standard must be set to ensure that there is sanity in the sector. Sharon Ijason, TVC News, Lagos.
Our thanks to Sharon Ijason there. And as I said, architect Akinola George, not a stranger of this program, he's in the studio again. Dr. Okonla Salako, Physical Planning and Urban Development Commissioner in Lagos State, his resignation has been accepted by the governor. There's a sense in which we don't know what's happened. Did he jump or was he pushed? I don't know. It doesn't matter. What does matter is that that office now is going to get a replacement. Is it going to make any difference? And I ask this question to you, starting off against the backdrop of the concept, regrettable concept, that anything goes in Lagos. You just have to know your way around. If that odious concept happens to have any traction, then nothing will change. And yet we know that there's so many people of influence whose interests might be touched in doing the right thing for physical planning. Are we ever going to make progress in that regard, architect?
Well, it's quite regrettable, actually. I shouldn't be coming here after a disaster, but that's what I keep doing.
Unfortunately.
After every disaster, I come here, I'm interviewed, I give my own ideas. The organization I was representing as the president, Building Collapse Prevention Guild, has a set of suggestions which for the past 11 years we have been clamoring for the Lagos State government to adopt. Lagos State government and all the other states all over the Federation. But unfortunately, it's either the government is afraid of something or they are unwilling to act. We have written so many letters, so many presentations that we've given to them on this modus operandi to adopt. A, the building procurement process is faulty. B, building construction processes should be better supervised in conjunction with the professionals. And these professionals are the only people, take it or leave it, that are trained to build. Architects, engineers, that is structural, mechanical, electrical engineers, builders, quantity surveyors, asset surveyors and valuers, town planners, surveyors. Those are the
all
seven.
of these come together.
We are the ones that are trained to build. We went to school. I spent 7 years reading architecture. So there must be something in those 7 years that I know that other people don't know. And we've been saying this all along, that this is what government should do. Collaborate with us. We are all over the cells, all over the local governments of every state, all over the Federation. Professionals are in every nook and cranny. And they can see buildings when they are stressed. You don't have enough staff. Lagos is developing at a phenomenal rate. That is, the construction is coming on greater than the Lagos State government or any of the governments can react to.
Okay.
So when you have the professionals who have the eyes for the job around every nook and cranny all over the country, use them. Come into agreement with them. Of all the 36 states of the Federation, it's only Ogun State government that has come into collaboration with us. We signed an MOU with them, and in Ogun State now we are busy monitoring everywhere. This is not about money for the professionals, but we are asking government to provide the wherewithal. Give vehicles to the professionals. Let them be able to move around so that they can be doing oversight functions on all the buildings that their colleagues have designed.
How recently did all of this happen? Because as you know, going back to go back to the history of Lagos, when Brazilians and Portuguese began arriving here, they came with artisans and began to build structures. And these perhaps were not necessarily all the professionals that you're talking about. And people just took it from there. There's a sort of a residual knowledge. In fact, you know that quite a number of people, including all of the states and particularly in Ogun State that you mentioned, there are contractors who feel that they have learnt the trade and have been in this trade for the past 40 years. The father before them was in it. And because of that, that convention has continued. People haven't come to where you are saying that this is a different era. Things are developing. Materials are changing. Knowledge needs to change as well. Are people still to hang on to the idea of we've been doing it from time immemorial?
Please, there are 3 issues there that are very crucial.
Sure.
The first one is the building procurement process.
Okay.
The building must be properly procured, approval must be sought from government and all those things, and then when we go to site, before we go to site, the building must be properly designed by the professionals, taken to government for approval.
Exactly.
And as it's going to site, government must continue to supervise. And by government, I mean the professionals in government.
Yeah, for oversight.
Now, the second one is standards. All those Brazilians and all those people that came there, they came with standards,
right,
and they adhered to those standards.
Okay.
Until compromises started happening. So with constant compromises will come constant hazards, which is what we'll be experiencing lately. The third major area is the desire of government to cope with the ability of government, let me put it this way, to cope with the burgeoning construction going on in Lagos. You don't have enough manpower to monitor. I can tell you that almost all the buildings under construction here, no more than 20% are properly procured. That is designed by professionals, built by professionals, and properly supervised by government. Because it's moving at a pace far faster than government can cope with. And we have a safety net in the professionals that are available. Use them. We have given, and again, when you do that, when government does that, government makes more revenue because government is able to properly cover its tax loopholes. You know, people are made, because of the involvement of the professionals, are made to pay as contractors, as professionals, all the people that are busy escaping the tax net. We made a proposal to government that we can bring everybody in this way, and it becomes a win-win. We reduce the cost of, we reduce the collapses that are happening, the number. We increase the revenue coming to government. You engage professionals such that everybody is happy.
Indeed. Now, let me ask one thing. It seems to me that, generally speaking, you can divide collapsed buildings in Lagos, or perhaps anywhere, into two broad categories, I would say. One is some old buildings that suddenly manifest a crack and after some time tumble down. People see the crack, it might not happen the same day, and then it comes down. These are old buildings, perhaps 60, 70, 80, 90 years old. Then there are the brand new buildings, so new they are still in progress, haven't been completed, they're coming down. Yet we hear of the West, where they will say a building has been in existence for the past 2.5 centuries. It's still there. But there's still, it needs to be said that there are still some very old buildings that are up structurally. Now, what can be done? Can government go around and have inspectors, building integrity inspectors, and determine that, in our considered opinion, this building has become a hazard, you need to do this, or there's nothing you can do anymore, we're going to have to take it down. Now, you know, in our culture, perhaps in everybody's culture, you don't want to take a building down. It's seen as something of a slaw on that family line, no matter how no matter how funny that notion sounds. And so the political will to do the right thing, I was arguing yesterday, might not necessarily exist in government.
It has to. Lagos is sick, like every other part of Nigeria. Nigeria is sick. And when a patient is sick, you have to apply the right antidote or the right medicine that will cure the sickness. If you don't apply it, the sickness will persist in the patient's body, or even claim the patient.
Okay, let me come in there, sir. In terms of diagnosing the sickness, let's look at this latest case. This building that came down. It was sick. It was supposed to be, according to word, 3 stories. But it went to the 4th, and then the 5th. That shows you that this sickness is getting worse. Why did somebody not step in, to continue your analogy, the way a doctor will step in and say, enough, take this person to the emergency, we got to operate. And it's no more a matter of being...
It happened, the building was flagged. So why did it continue under construction?
Why did it continue?
Exactly.
But that happens. This is the problem I'm been complaining about, sir. This happens frequently in Lagos.
Yes. Why would you?
I was even accusing the Lagos State government of not having the wherewithal to enforce its own emergency directives. It's been flagged. You're not supposed to continue. Somebody says, you see, you're talking to yourself. They continue. And nothing happens until this disaster happens.
What happens to enforcement? We have 500 laws, 0 enforcement. If you don't we are enforcing the wrong things. Or let me say the not so important things. This is life and death. Construction is deep science. And if you don't adhere by the rules, the laws and regulations of construction, of the science, the technology to put up buildings with, you are going to have failure.
Sure.
And when you have failure, you have catastrophe. You have consequences happening and leading to death. This is just the blatant truth. And if we don't adhere to it, the patient will always die.
And so there's going to be more of these unless something radical is
done. The
done.
radical thing, look at it now. The Honorable Commissioner has resigned.
Okay.
It doesn't solve the problem.
And I even wonder what that means.
We advised so many times that this is what we should do. Why don't we try our stupid, let's say in quotes, stupid suggestions?
Okay, one moment please, because Mr. George has been waiting for a while. I think he wants to contribute to the program. Good morning to you, Mr. George.
Good morning, Uncle Yori.
You're also Mr. George. Mr. George in studio reminded me that you're calling Mr. George and Mr. George too.
Yes, thank you. Uncle Yori, it's unfortunate that the Honorable Commissioner has resigned. The Commissioner does not visit building sites. He relies on what is presented to him by his men, and he simply signs. How many sites, even if you were to be visiting sites, how many of such sites will he be able to visit? But I am strongly in support of the suggestion of your guest. I think the building industry is a little bit more than the agency that is supervising it in Lagos. The pace at which that industry is growing in Lagos, that agency that ministry is not capable enough to follow suit in terms of supervisory procedures for the integrity of buildings to be maintained. Many of the buildings that are collapsing, they predate the tenure of the commissioner that resigned. So resignation really is not the way out. But the way out is how to, form a very formidable enforcement team. I think private/public partnership, like the guest suggested, might do, even if it is done on consultation fee basis, that you are able to maintain the integrity of buildings from this area to that area for so period. We can get you to get this amount of commission, which is derivable from the tax the owners of such buildings pay.
Yeah.
I think it's a dynamic way of addressing it. The ministry, Uncle Yori, in the place I live, for example, I see them often coming to inspect buildings. Even if there are defects, at the end of the day, they do not, I don't see them meting out, penalties to them other than fining them. Fining them is only making them to pay money. It doesn't make the building to imbibe integrity automatically.
Yeah, indeed. Thank you.
Saving life is more important.
It is.
So I am agreeing with his suggestion.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. George. As you explained, this is a science here. It's physics, it's building, it's all sorts of things. And people need to know this science. Yes, there's an art part to it, but it must be based on sound science. Otherwise, the whole thing is coming down. The whole beautiful edifice is coming down. As Mr. George was saying, when people go inspect and they notice something and they point it out, then a fine is issued. Maybe it's even paid, and then the place is reopened again. But the fundamental problem has not been sorted out, and that is where you said the problem. Reverend Dominic has come on the line. Good morning to you, Reverend.
Before Reverend
Good
Dominic
morning,
speaks,
Yori. How are you?
just quickly.
Just because of his call, please hold the idea.
How are you?
Very well, Reverend. It's been quite a while.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Reverend.
Okay, let me stop where my brother George stopped.
Sure.
Yori, there's something I called, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, there's something I call the corruption of supervision. What do I mean by that? Yori, yes, the commissioner has resigned, but the commissioner doesn't go to site to supervise those buildings. The young men and women who go to site to supervise those buildings are Mark X. When they Mark X for you, you go back to office and settle them. They will put X in your file, and you continue the job. The day the house collapsed, they say, we come up, we have seen it 6 months ago, and they continue. The question you ask, say 6 months or 7 months, they seal up the house, and somebody is still working, 7-story building. Is he doing it at night? If it does at night, nobody sees him. A huge building, you are building for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 months. After you have seen it, and somebody is still working, and nothing happened, who do you hold responsibility? I call it the corruption of supervision. Until we get the corruption of supervising those buildings out of the way, then either the house is not quality enough, or the engineer is not qualified, you stop it and stop it. Or they come back to you and you resign it.
Okay.
But for you to go and put something in somebody's file, to execute you, express yourself when something happens, it's the greatest corruption, not the commissioner. Let me give you an example. We talk about the Egbe Bridge here at Echibo. Egbe Bridge, people who built container terminal on that sewage, on that bridge, they put it as. I remember today, like we said, when the supervisor, our advisor to Commissioner of Works come here, he said they're going to pull it down. That container has been finished. A story building is standing there. thousands of containers standing in the bridge, and you see the flood in Nigeria. But there's an X in the file in the office of planning. So I think that trouble comes. That we said 2 years ago we marked it. What a rubbish is this?
Well, I hear you. Thank you, Reverend Dominic, for calling in. Please, do you recall the point you wanted to make?
Yes. Lagos State must be ready to spend the money. We have to do an integrity analysis. Once a building is flagged, don't say because you flagged it last week and we flagged it and no, once a building is flagged, do an integrity analysis. In fact, Lagos State must be ready to start a process of integrity analysis conduction on almost every building.
Maybe they are ready now. Why I said that is that in announcing the resignation of the Commissioner for Information, Omotosho in Lagos State says this is the beginning of a radical rejig of that whole ministry, reform.
I just hope so. You divided problems of collapse into two earlier. You're correct. There is the collapse that happens to old buildings, which maybe they've spent over 50, 60, 100 years, and they are looking weak, and they're coming down, maybe due to overuse, like the Macy Street building where the children died.
Yes.
Then there's the second one of buildings under construction, where the construction process is not properly procured, where the designs are not properly procured, where government did not. So
maybe materials are inferior.
Yes, all those things. So those two classes must be differentiated. So all those old buildings, for them to be able to serve new purposes, they must be properly analyzed. And when they're analyzed, through an integrity analysis, then we have a solution. Because once it fails an integrity test, then the building must come down. And the other ones that are new, once they have been flagged, maybe they flout any point on the process of approval or process of supervision. If they fail any point there, then there must be an integrity analysis, an integrity test on the building. The building integrity must be checked. So that we will say we flagged it last week, but it's coming down now. What was that? As I said earlier, it is a science. You can't model things up.
Indeed. And what you're saying stands so much to reason. I wonder that it even needs to be said at all because it is adopted elsewhere. The unfortunate developer of the Gerard Road disaster, he is reported to have done the same thing successfully in the UK, in South Africa. No problem. But it came to Nigeria and that happened. Ian, Mr. Ian.
Yes, sir.
Okay, good morning, Mr. Ian.
Good morning.
Please go ahead.
Good morning, TVC News. Yeah, I am so much captivated by the issues of building collapse in Nigeria. Am I still online?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right. I am so much captivated by the rate at which buildings are collapsing in Nigeria. It's quite unfortunate, but it could be summarized into one thing: compromise. Yeah, it is compromise, and the compromise is such that it's from the top to the bottom. Okay. I wouldn't want to sound so negative, but I want to say that what is happening in the construction industry is exactly the problem that Nigeria is facing. How could, if you go to the market now and look at the materials, am I still online?
You are still with us.
All right, sir. If you go to the market now and look at the quality of materials, you'll see that there is a very drastic drop in the quality of materials. If you go now, look at the sizes of reinforcement that we had probably in the 70s, and they say it is a 16 mm. Go understand the tensile strength and the size. Go to today's market. Also, take a look at that same quality, that same material. We say it is a 16 mm. Take a look at the tensile strength and take a look at the size. All of these things.
I hear you, Mr. Yang. Thank you very much. The quality of materials is also an issue. Thank you very much for calling in there. But I wonder how much of the case that is, as opposed to because of the escalating prices, builders, people who are developing projects, decide on their own to sort of cut corners. Maybe the mixtures aren't right, for example. Maybe the kind of rods he was talking about, maybe you're using a more affordable one that's not exactly. Maybe those are also some of the things that are happening that, again, checks should be able to ascertain that, no, that is not going to be, you didn't pass that inspection. You can't go to the next stage. That's what's done in other areas. But for here, there is what is referred to as the Niger syndrome. And it seems to be allowed because there's nothing you can do, unfortunately.
There's nothing like, you see, science, I keep reverting back to this.
Of course.
Technology is the same all over the world. You can't say you want to go to the moon and you build a rocket and you say, well, let us use this. Mm-hmm. It will explode. You can see this Artemis that is going to the moon now has been postponed twice.
Yes, yes.
Why? Because of simple problems of leakage. Something as simple as that can.
But if you want, for instance, you want to make your cement go further because cement is expensive, you don't have to put in much more sand.
That's why they should give the jobs to professionals.
Who will refuse to do that?
Yes.
They will not compromise.
They will not compromise. You compromise, you lose your license. You compromise, you lose your certificate. That's just it.
Well, it seems like Lagos wants to mop up, clean up that whole sector, going by the language of Benga Motosho. Speaking.
Sir, they've been doing that a long time. They all know me there. They know BCPG. We are not strangers to each other. The professionals inside there are the same professionals that are outside. And we keep telling them, do this. Collaborate with professionals outside. They will meet with us. If they can hear me, let them hear me. They will meet with us, and then we will all agree. The next thing they won't implement.
Oh dear. Oh dear.
They won't implement, and they will tell you, I don't know. It can only be somebody, Mr. Falani, somebody is hiding something.
Right now, in this case.
Go up to the governor. I challenge the governor, if he wants to really solve the problem, he should call the professionals. And if he says he has called them, then let us try this particular aspect out and see what will happen. Mm-hmm. The governor himself is one of us.
Indeed. He's experienced in that field.
No, I think he's a surveyor or something.
Yes, and he headed up LEDB for quite a long while, so he knows what it's about.
LSDPC. So he knows what to do. And if his sector there is sick, then he should do a surgical operation on that sector. Okay. If people are not going to allow us to move and do the right thing, do a surgical operation, for God's sake.
Ikechukwu, good morning and thank you for holding on. Go ahead now, please.
Okay, good morning.
Good morning.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you. We're waiting for you, though.
Okay. I'm Ikechukwu, electrical engineer.
Okay.
I tend to go towards what the architect is saying, and it all deals with we're having problems in this country. We don't regard professionals. Professionals, you get somebody. I've been in Lagos and I get people that just 2 years into the building sector and they start building story buildings. You have to struggle. You can't convince them that this thing is wrong. They now even employ the professionals themselves and tell the professionals what to do. Regulatory agencies come there just for money. They're not coming here to do the right thing. I feel if our professional bodies are strong, we won't be having these issues.
Okay.
If they are chartered, government allow these professional bodies function and do their things. You see everything outside this country as far as Mozambique. You cannot go and build a house if you're not under that professional body. You're not even a professional. Anybody can do anything. Any electrician is stronger than even an engineer.
All right then. Well, thank you very much for calling in, which is the point that the architect has been making, that enough of this nonsense. He said that he is well known. We're talking about Lagos State now. He's a professional. He's an architect. He says similar professionals are also in there. They are not strangers to this. They also know what he is talking about. So he will begin to look elsewhere. It's not a complete lack of knowledge. They're not a bunch of charlatans in there. It must be that there are political obstacles to doing the right thing. My guess. Because if somebody is going to stop this whole process, I can imagine the number of phone calls that will start to go around. And unfortunately, it being what it is, human relations and that kind of a thing, political, whatever, some compromises get made and people just rely on a prayer and say, well, I hope it won't come down. The fact that the thing won't come down in the next 5 years, when a professional has determined that this thing is, this structure is, not stable. I just hope that we get there, but I just take a bit more solace in what the Lagos State government has said through a motor show, that accepting the resignation of Mr. Salako, Dr. Salako, is the beginning of reform in that whole sector. But then you say you've heard that before.
Yes.
We're going to have to leave it there.
Surgery, before you go, please. Surgery. You can't say because you want to compromise something, then you allow surgery that should happen not to happen.
Yeah.
The patient will die.
And that, I think that's something that all of us should just take hold of. If the right thing is not done, quote unquote, patients will die. We don't want buildings coming down. And just maybe Lagos State is going to get a hold of it now. It remains to be seen. Thank you very much, sir. Architect Akinola George, immediate past president, Building Collapse Prevention Guild.